I'm going to be talking about the endings of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and I'll be explicitly spoiling both shows immediately, so heads up. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are pretty infamous online for the fact that far too many discussions surrounding them sound like this.
I watched American Psycho and got really confused when he started killing people. He is the main character. He is supposed to be a good guy.
There aren't a lot of clear-cut good guys, and the leads are morally gray at best, genuinely terrible people at worst. At the time I'm recording this, Better Call Saul just aired its finale, Saul Gone, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still thinking about how it ended, especially in comparison with Breaking Bad. They're different shows with wildly different ambitions despite sharing a lot of their cast, but their endings both raise similar questions for me. Where do we want the characters we love to end up? Do we consider what's right for the story? What's the most thematically resonant? Do we think about what they deserve? I spent a lot of time between episodes pondering what would happen to Jimmy and Kim. I just didn't know how the show would end. Should Saul die? Go to jail? He certainly couldn't just be on the run forever. Up until the penultimate episode, where it looked like Gene was about to tie up or possibly strangle an old woman, I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. But his actions towards the end of Season 6 proved to be the final straw for me. I used to see the good in Jimmy, but now I thought he deserved the worst, and that whatever he had coming would be brutal. And when the finale came, Saul kind of got a happy ending, and I remembered why I cared about him.
I do.
Mr. Goodman, you are now under oath.
He goes to jail, but this was by far the best option for him at this point, and it honestly seems like he's thriving in the environment. It's bittersweet, but Breaking Bad also ends on a relatively positive note for its main character. Walt's family hated him, and he sure made life hell for others, but he accomplished everything he set out to do and went out in a blaze of glory, getting his riches to his kids and revenge on all of his enemies, dying famous. The more I sit on it, the more I like how Saul ends, and the more I think Breaking Bad's conclusion is somewhat flawed. I love these characters and where they ended up in both shows, but I keep wondering, is it what they all deserved? One of the many reasons these two shows in particular are so compelling is that everyone will have a different point at which they think the characters have gone too far. Jimmy, Gene, Saul, Victor with a K, whatever you want to call him, he started off as an okay guy. On the other hand, Walter White went from bad to worse. Some could always see him for who he really was, but most people start off on his side. It's hard to see the inhumanity that was there all along. Even when he is being a bit of a dick, it's easy to cut him some slack because his life is really hard and we're only just getting to know him. He genuinely seems like a desperate man who's trying to provide for and protect his family, however unconventionally. For some, it's him causing Jane's death, or maybe it's him poisoning Brock just to manipulate Jesse. But at some point, he crosses a line for everyone that forces us to recontextualize his past actions and consider if he was a villain all along. Jimmy was also doing questionable things since pretty much Season 1, but I always thought he still had time to change because, unlike Walt, he actually did have a notable good side. In the end, he may have done more harm than good, but it was clear he was capable of more, where Walt seemed to be fundamentally cruel. The only remotely positive trait Walt has is that he does care about his family and Jesse, and that's like the bare minimum. I saw Jimmy be genuinely selfless and kind, and he showed self-awareness of his faults for what it's worth. In the final episode, Jimmy owns up to his wrongdoings and symbolically chooses to go by his real name for the first time in many years.
The name's McGill. I'm James McGill.
It may not quite be redemption, but in what might be the biggest decision in his whole life, he atones for his sins and gets himself decades added onto his prison sentence as a consequence. He shows remorse, and he understands that any chance of being a better person must come with accepting these consequences. Walt does nothing even close. In Breaking Bad's finale, Felina, Walt admits that his actions were selfish, but that's about it. He cared about his family, but he murdered and manipulated and did everything he did because he liked it.
I was good at it.
When following the protagonist of any work, no matter how awful a person they are or have become, it's not uncommon to still want them to get a happy ending. We've been privy to their innermost thoughts, we follow them for dozens of hours, and we're invested in them. Even if their actions are things one would normally consider reprehensible, the framing of them as the hero can prime us to be empathetic towards them. Plus, it's fiction. Just because we like a piece of art doesn't mean we condone everything that happens in it. The internet tends to poke fun at folks that fall to either extreme, either thinking that Walt is a virtuosic badass or that the show is evil for condoning his behavior. But there is a little bit of nuance here. People are rightfully concerned about the state of media literacy, for some not comprehending that the show very much condemns Walt's character and the ideologies he represents. There's no need for Bryan Cranston to break the fourth wall and stare into the camera apologizing for Walt's behavior for us to know this. But his actions are occasionally framed as cool, especially in the earlier seasons where people are more likely teetering between rooting for him and being appalled by him. And sometimes the things he does are just cool.
This is not myth.
Something that gets talked about more now with the show having been off the air for close to a decade is that it's hilarious.
What are we building? You said it yourself. A robot.
It's as often a dark comedy as it is a drama, and it's really funny to watch Walt just go off on someone. The tone and the fact that he makes us laugh is another reason we root for him. And sometimes it's just fun to root for the villain for a change. But at the end of the day, Walt is a manipulator, and if you ever feel sorry for him, it's because he manipulated you, the audience. It's completely intentional that he can be charming, and it just further drives home how insidious this type of person can be. Still, it's hard to finish Breaking Bad thinking that Walt is a remotely cool guy, though some succeed at that. All of this is to say that Breaking Bad's ending is perhaps too kind to Walt, but we followed him for so long that the part of us that wants him to win is okay with it. I find it hard to claim someone as a lost cause, but Walt was never going to redeem himself. There was never a chance of him living the rest of his life happily with his family, or even unhappily hiding away in New Hampshire. And if he wasn't killed in a hail of bullets, he would have succumbed to his cancer rotting in a jail cell. And maybe the latter is what he actually had coming. Did he get what he deserved? Did he deserve to be punished more? What does that even mean in this context? Deserve. In this country, we like to pretend that prison's main purpose is rehabilitation. I mean, we do admit it's to punish criminals, but we also say that it's rehabilitation. The idea is that if you commit a crime, you can be reformed to become a more productive member of society. Prison is supposed to reduce recidivism and make you a better person, but this is pretty obviously not how it functions in reality. Things like for-profit prisons and the lack of good rehabilitation programs are just a few examples of how ridiculously flawed our system is. Earlier, I referred to Walt as a fundamentally cruel person, but why would we ever want to believe a fellow human being is really beyond helping, even a fictional one? I don't think everyone has to be redeemed in our stories, but so many of our narratives are black and white, in real life and fiction. I think a part of the reason I struggle with Breaking Bad's ending is that I want to see the good in people. But a part of me has been infected by propaganda that deals in absolutes. For one, the existence of the death penalty ensures that as a society, there's some people we don't deem worthy of redemption, of change, of life. There's a great video on the many downsides of the death penalty by Sean that I'll link in the description. But the point I want to mention is that its existence fundamentally posits that some people don't deserve to live. I strongly disagree with the concept of the death penalty inherently, but my initial reaction to Walt's death is still, yeah, he deserved it. Truly evil people are hard to find. Human beings are more complex than that, but there are some crimes that we tend to deem too depraved. Even if we say we believe in the possibility of people changing, our gut reactions to certain crimes are often hypocritically that they should be punished. It's not uncommon to have standards on this front that aren't cohesive. And just know this is not a call-out, I'm talking about myself here. I think most people know that revenge isn't justice, that it only perpetuates violence and doesn't actually do any good. Walt can't bring back the lives he took, but he can pay for them. But the reality is that if someone can change for the better, that's always the more desirable outcome. And if we think people are capable of change, we have to extend that onto all people. And if it is possible for someone that's just innately evil, incapable of self-improvement to exist, I wouldn't want them in a position where they could hurt themselves or others, but I would still want them treated humanely and consistently. I still think that thematically Walt shouldn't have had such a heroic ending though. It may have been more challenging, but an ending where he went to jail and lived out his days there until the cancer took him might have been better. Does it play into archaic, karmic ideals of justice a bit much? Maybe, but it is fiction, and again, art doesn't have to be perfectly morally pure, and it's just my interpretation. My thoughts on this are constantly shifting, and I find myself thinking about the different ways things could have gone, and what it means that they went the way they did. There isn't a correct interpretation here. How much of Jimmy's spiral into Saul was his own doing? Would he have gone down a more righteous path if it weren't for the constant undermining and abuse of his brother? To say it's all Chuck's fault robs Jimmy of his agency. It's impossible to definitively say how much Jimmy is responsible for Jimmy's behavior, and how much Chuck is, but neither is zero. Did Jimmy deserve the ending he got? Did Walt? It's subjective. Some things are more clear-cut. Jesse got arguably the best ending out of the whole cast, and anything else would have been unsatisfying. On every level, the happy ending was the correct choice. But for a situation like Jimmy and Kim's, does she keep visiting him in prison? Does she lose it all in the civil suit? As a friend of mine astutely pointed out, either outcome would make sense. What we deserve isn't clear. Human beings are constantly growing creatures. We don't have concrete arcs and our development doesn't cease until we die. But when a story ends, it ends. I think Jimmy redeemed himself as much as he could, and the same goes for Kim. Were they successful? While the story might have ended, for us, it'll keep going on in our heads. We can decide if they got what they deserved, if Jimmy ever really did change, or if this was always going to be the outcome. There is no perfect, unbiased lens for analysis. No one interpretation is more correct than any other, and in this case, I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me so I can continue making videos like these, you can join my Patreon for as little as $1. There's a lot of perks depending on the tier, such as director's commentaries or your names in the credits like these people you see here. The cost of living everywhere is ridiculous right now, and I never want to pressure or guilt people into something like this. Please only give if you can and truly want to. But if you share this video or anything else, I'll also be extremely grateful. Thank you.